Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we're back with more of the executive branch of the United States. Today, we're doing a discussion on the Department of Defense. I'm only going to do defense today, and then the next video we'll finish up with the Attorney General. But let's get into this talking about the Department of Defense. They're led by the Secretary of Defense and handle national defense from the Pentagon. Um, and it was created in recognition for a national army under um, under the Second Continental Congress. I couldn't even read my own writing. I apologize. Under the Constitution, the office was officially formed as the Department of War. So, not yet Department of Defense. It's originally called the Department of War. But the first person we're going to look at, and this person has a lot of information, kind of surprised me. Henry Knox was the first uh, Secretary of Defense. Was born on July the 25th, 1750 in Boston, Massachusetts, to William and Mary Knox, who were immigrants from Ulster, Scotland. William Knox was a shipbuilder, but would leave and abandon his family because of financial hardships. So he was left to be raised by only his mother. He studied Greek, Latin, arithmetic, and European history, and became a bookstore clerk at 9 years of age when his father did abandon the family. Taught himself French and philosophy, and on March the 5th, 1770, he witnessed the Boston Massacre and testified in the trial of the British soldiers. He opened his own bookstore in 1771 and would form connections with British suppliers, but his business would soon slump after the Boston Port Bill and a boycott of British goods. Now, he supported the Sons of Liberty. He did not participate in the Boston Tea Party, but he was a guard who kept the tea from being unloaded on the ship so that it would be tea used in the Tea Party. Let's see. He married Lucy Flucker on the 16th of June, 1774. Lucy's father was a British loyalist, and her brother actually served in the British Army. And they were against her being with Henry Knox, but they both, Henry and Lucy both snuck out of Boston after the battles of Lexington and Concord essentially kicks off the war. Now, Knox would join the militia army and end up abandoning his bookstore. He would serve under General Artemus Ward and directed rebel cannon fire at the Battle of Bunker Hill. This impressed George Washington. Well, Knox impressed George Washington with the fortifications he helped build in Boston, and Washington and Knox would become friends. John Adams would get Knox a commission as a colonel in the Continental Army Artillery Regiment. He would then be sent by George Washington to capture cannons at Fort Ticonderoga and Fort Crown Point after both forts had fell. Henry Knox hauled the cannons back by ox-driven sleds to Boston, arriving back on the 27th of January, 1776. He would then be sent to improve defenses of Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York City. He would meet Alexander Hamilton and befriend General Benjamin Lincoln. He was also George Washington was with George Washington's army during the New York and New Jersey campaign. He was at the British invasion of Manhattan and was in charge of logistics for the crossing of the Delaware, which helped of the Delaware River, which was how they got troops into the Battle of Trenton. Now, on December the 26th, 1776, Knox was promoted to brigadier general and given command of an artillery corps of 5 regiments. He would be involved at the battles of Assunpink Creek and Princeton. During the winter of 1777, he returned to Massachusetts to improve the artillery manufacturing capability and establish an armory at Springfield, Massachusetts. Upon his return to the main army force, he discovered that a French soldier of fortune, Philippe Charles Tronson de Courdray, was placed by the Continental Congress in control of the artillery forces. Knox threatened to resign, and John Sullivan and Nathaniel Greene protested over putting someone else in charge of the artillery. Because of this, Du Courdray was moved to the post of Inspector General. Knox was at the battles of Brandywine and Germantown and Monmouth. He also, in Bedminster, New Jersey in 1779, would establish the Continental Army's first school of artillery and officer training. Now, in 1781, Knox was with George Washington's army for the siege of Yorktown, and Knox received a promotion to Major General on the 22nd of March, 1782, becoming the Army's youngest Major General. He was appointed commander of West Point by General George Washington in August of 1782. In March of 1783, rumors of mutiny would make the rounds, and Knox would help Washington uh, diffuse the uh, spreading rumors of mutiny. Knox was given day-to-day command of the army in April of 1783, and in November of 1783, the last British troops left, and the next month, George Washington resigned, leaving Knox as the senior officer of the army. In November of 1783 as well, Benjamin Lincoln resigned as the Secretary of War under the Articles of Confederation, and Knox was considered as a potential replacement, but the position was left open, and Knox ended up resigning in early 1784 from the Army. Um, Knox and Lucy would establish a home in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and on March the 8th, 1765, Congress officially appointed Henry Knox the Secretary of War under the Articles of Confederation. In 1786, he went personally with a militia and put down Shays' rebellion, emphasizing the need for a peacetime army. Now, Knox would help push for a new government and actively promote the recently written Constitution. One of the one Once the Constitution was adopted, the War Department was established, and Knox was made the first Secretary of War under the Constitution, which sees him introduce things such as the Militia Act of 1792 and put into use the armories that he made at Springfield, Massachusetts, as well as one newly made in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. In dealing with the native populations, Knox felt tribes rightfully owned the land they were on, but he was often overruled by the doctrine of discovery, which allowed citizens to travel out and basically take Indian land. Knox would leave office on January the 2nd, 1795, and he spent the rest of his life uh, cattle farming, shipbuilding, brick making, as well as real estate speculation, and would pass away on October the 25th, 1806. The next person to get the office was Timothy Pickering. Now, we already discussed that he was part of the State Department, but let's go ahead and go over one more time. He was born on July the 17th, 1745, in Salem, Massachusetts, would graduate from Harvard College in 1763, and admitted to the Massachusetts bar in 1768. In 1774, he became the Essex County Register of Deeds, and shortly after elected to represent Salem in Massachusetts General Court. Served as the Justice of the Essex County Court of Common Pleas, and in April of 1775 led some men in a military confrontation in North Salem known as Leslie's Retreat. He would then marry Rebecca White in April of 1776, and General George Washington would make him an adjutant general in 1777. In August of 1780, he became quartermaster general, and in 1783, he had a failed mercantile business attempt with Samuel Hodgson. In 1786, he would move to Pennsylvania to hold several offices in Luzerne County. And in 1794, he would be appointed commissioner to the Iroquois Indians by President Washington. He then became the Postmaster General from 1791 to 1795, and after Knox leaves, he becomes the Secretary of War for a short period in 1795. He would become the Secretary of State later that year until 1800, and would be named senator from Massachusetts in 1803 for one term, would be elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from 1812 to 1817, would finish the rest of his life as a farmer before dying on January the 29th, 1829. Now, the last person for the Department of War would be James McHenry under Washington's presidency. James McHenry was born November the 16th, 1753, in Ballymena, Ireland, as the son of a merchant. Fearing he was becoming ill from excessive studying, his family sent him in 1771 to North America, in Philadelphia. Now, the rest of the family would show up a year later. McHenry lived in Philadelphia with a family friend before finishing his preparatory education at the Newark Academy in Delaware. He then was apprenticed under Benjamin Rush to be a physician upon return to Philadelphia. He would then join the military hospital in Cambridge as a volunteer assistant surgeon following the outbreak of war in 1775. On the 10th of August, 1776, he accepted a transfer to a New York medical hospital as a surgeon at Fort Washington. And on November the 16th, 1776, he was captured by British and Hessian forces under General Howe. And McHenry was one of the people taken prisoner. He was paroled in January 1777 before being officially released in March of 1778. So I guess he was just allowed to move around within the confines of the British camp. He would rejoin the Continental Army at Valley Forge in the Flying Hospital. In May of 1779, he would be appointed an aide as secretary to General George Washington. He would then see action at the Battle of Monmouth. In August of 1780, he was transferred to the Marquis de Lafayette's staff, where he would remain for his time in the Continental Army until autumn of 1781. In September of 1781, he entered Maryland politics, serving for 13 years in different positions. In 1796, he was appointed the Secretary of War by President George Washington, replacing Timothy Pickering. He would stay on as Secretary of War into the Adams administration before resigning on May the 13th, 1800. In 1814, he would have an attack of paralysis, causing him severe pain and a complete loss of use in his legs. So yeah, not long after he would pass away. I don't have his death listed, but anyway, yeah, that was the first Department of War under George Washington. Henry Knox, who Fort Knox is named after, Timothy Pickering, and then James McHenry. And you can see that all of them have some kind of connection to Washington. So Washington was well aware of their abilities. But I'll go ahead and end this episode here. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, tell them to cite their sources. I will be citing sources in the description below the video. But as always, I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.